in those press conferences, the interview, he's standing next to his department, head of the Department of Commerce, which a lot of people are like, who's this guy? I've never seen this guy before or heard of him before. And, I remembered who he was. And I was like, oh, this is Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick was the CEO of
When was this?
In the press conference where Trump basically takes questions about Epstein and calls his base stupid for being interested in the Epstein files. He's sitting directly next to...
Is this the one with Pam Bondi?
No, this is not. There's one in the White House conference room, and then there's another one.
Can you find the one where he's talking about Steve so we can see Howard Lutnick sitting next to him?
Howard Lutnick sitting right next to him, man. So I was amazed. I said, why is Howard Lutnick covering up for this? And you find out. Yeah. This is one of them. I'm not. I know that you can find the clip while we talk about this for a second, but. He's sitting next. This is the clip where Trump calls his base stupid. Basically. I
haven't seen this one yet.
He insults his base. So he says, everyone, the people who are interested in this are stupid, and basically calling people silly. Oh, it's old news. Let's not worry about this. It's nonsense. But he's sitting next to Howard Lutnick, and I'm saying, how is Howard Lutnick covering up for all this? And then people have pointed out that Howard Lutnick bought the house right next door to Jeffrey Epstein. That Epstein was running his whole New York operation out of 971st Street. Well, the house next door to it, 1171st Street, was also owned in part through this Comet Trust is what actually owned it.
Leslie Wexner gave that house to Jeffrey Epstein, right?
I believe so. I believe he gave the house to him, or it gave it to him through a series of trusts. But he had this in the background, and then a trust called the Comet Trust sold it to Howard Lutnick. And I'm like, Comet Trust? I never heard of that before. But if you search for anything related to Comet and Jeffrey Epstein, you get the all that QAnon disinfo garbage about Ping Pong Pizza and Comet Pizza and the Pizzagate crap, right? Which I think was I think that was a counterintelligence op that was put out right after the Epstein stuff to really distract people.
You think it was a distraction?
Off. Yeah,
limited hangout?
A lot of the QAnon was a limited
hangout.
Here
it is. Here's the video.
Yeah. So he's
hit it.
I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled?
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
Yeah, this is all bullshit. And the fact that Howard Lutnick, the CEO who suffered the biggest losses on 9/11, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, his company lost 658 employees that day. He lost his brother Gary Lutnick that day,
right?
And he said he cried for 3 years after that, and couldn't get himself back together. And I felt really bad for the guy. I didn't consider him on my list of suspicious people because of all that. But the fact that he's on, with Trump defending the release of these Epstein files when he bought the house next door to Epstein, lived in that house next door to Epstein on 11. And it's interesting, 9 and 11 71st Street in New York City were the addresses that Jeffrey Epstein owned.
You can't be connecting those dots,
but
bro.
No. There's some weird dots here. Because
you're saying because it was 9 71st Street and 11 71st Street, it's 9/11.
Yeah, that's a crap connection. But some people have made that connection. But
I'm sure they have.
But how about this? Because it's only odd numbers on that side of the street, so it's just 9. The house next door,
right?
So maybe it's coincidence, right? It seems like one of those things, right? But here's the interesting thing: is that Howard Lutnick, if you're going to commit a massive crime and a financial crime, the best thing you could possibly do is to disguise yourself as a victim and to portray yourself as a victim. So I'm saying there's a lot of weird CEOs that missed work that day. not just Howard Lutnick.
Oh, yeah, a ton.
Larry Silverstein.
Oh, yeah.
And then you ask Grok these questions, like you ask the AIs these questions. You would say, which CEOs missed work on 9/11? They'll tell you Larry Silverstein and Howard Lutnick, but they won't tell you any of the other ones. And they'll, you ask it questions and it won't tell you the answers. It's kind of like the same thing as if you ask, does vaccines cause autism? It will give you these, responses that are, according to the books, these authorities, and there's no, but if you ask it specific questions tailored to certain things and certain studies, and you know the information or you know the people, suddenly you get real answers from the AI, which means somebody's programming these AIs to hide certain information from us.
Of course they are.
And I thought that was really weird because I'm asking it questions about, was Gary Lutnick ever connected to Jeffrey Epstein? And it said, he couldn't possibly have had any connections to Jeffrey Epstein because Howard Lutnick brought the property from Jeffrey Epstein after his brother died. And I said, no, he didn't. He bought the property in 1998. His brother died in 2001.
How did you find that out?
And how did I find that out?
That he bought it from him in 1998.
It's you ask Grok. If you ask Grok when he bought it from, it will tell you 1998.
Oh, so it tells you the truth.
And then when you re-query it and you tell it, it'll say, I corrected myself. But for some reason, it's trying to separate these people and these entities, which is really strange. And it won't tell you other CEOs that missed work in the towers that day, like Paul Bremer of Marsh & McLennan or Jeffrey Greenberg of Marsh & McLennan.
Well, here's the thing. Google. Have you heard of this guy named Robert Epstein? He does
Robert Epstein.
Epstein. He calls himself Epstein, but he does all this stuff where he points out all of the bias with Google and how Google is curated for certain things, and how he basically pointed out largely how Google suppressed and amplified certain stories during the last few elections, right? If you were to Google anything if you were to try to get a positive story about Trump, you couldn't find anything on Google.
Right.
But if you tried to find it, and if you tried to find a negative story about Kamala, it would only get positive stories when you looked for it.
Right.
And this guy found it out, and he installed software on. He started a trial where he got hundreds of people to agree to be involved in this trial, where he basically was monitoring their search engine, and they were all searching stuff, and he was trying to gather data on what kind of results they were getting on certain searches. And obviously it's different for everybody because everyone's got a different algorithm. But by and large, he found, and he measured this all and broke it all down, that the bias towards the left-wing news was far greater than towards the right-hand stuff, especially leading up to the elections. And, I'm sure it's not just in elections and stuff like this. It's throughout politics and with everything. And they bury stuff on Google. We know that Google curates stuff. You know by just being on YouTube, you see shit shadow banned all the time. So if these LLMs are running their queries on Google, you're flawed from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's also crazy the amount of programming stuff that comes up in the whole history of Jeffrey Epstein too, as I was talking about with the Inslaw affair and the Promise software. Robert Maxwell was part of the team that stole that Promise software from the developers who made it.
Really?
And they he sold a backdoor copy. Yeah, well, the guy who stole it was Ben Orr, who was later identified as this top Israel spy, Rafi Itan or something. And then Robert Maxwell sold a hacked version of the Promise software to Los Alamos Labs and Sandia Labs. And they had to put a back door inside the software so that they could get into the labs and stuff. And that's how basically Israel stole all our nuclear secrets.
I thought we started selling Promise to a whole bunch of other countries, and we put a back door into it so we could get into those countries.
They did too, yes. This was all it was all spy work that they did with this stuff. And then they had, I heard about other software, this Silverstream company, a guy named Richard Andrew Grove was working for them, and they were developing this new financial trading platform that a bunch of Fortune 500 companies in the World Trade Center had just started using before 9/11. And he had found a back door in the software and reported it to his superiors. They told him, don't worry about it. Oh, it's nothing, it's no big deal. And he kept bringing it up. And they finally said, you know what, we want you to take all your evidence of this and stuff, and we want you to come and bring it to a meeting on the 98th floor of the World Trade Center on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. And he was actually late going to the meeting, and saw the planes hit the towers, and didn't go into the meeting. But they had basically told him to take all his evidence for this back door in the software and bring it to the 98th floor of the World Trade Center, where someone knew the plane was going to hit. So there's some weird. 9/11 is the weirdest day in American history when you look at Howard Lutnick's behavior. That he's living in this house next door to Jeffrey Epstein. His working in Cantor Fitzgerald. Most of the people that died. Suffered the biggest financial losses in the World Trade Center on 9/11. Again,
if we ask Grok right now if Howard Lutnick's house next door to Jeffrey Epstein, will it tell us about it?
Well, this is a weird thing, right? Because I've gone through this in my head, because obviously Jeffrey Epstein, all of his houses had hidden cameras and microphones like all throughout them, right? So if he's selling the house next door to Howard Lutnick, what's the chances that thing's not wired up to record him and spy on him?
Right.
It's kind of
less
it
than
just
zero.
makes it's less than zero, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Howard Lutnick buys his house in 98, lives there for 3 years until 9/11. What did they collect on Howard Lutnick? Did they blackmail him? And then why would he protect these people if he was blackmailed or I don't get the whole dynamics here, and it just makes me very suspicious of him involved in something much deeper because of all the other CEOs that missed work that day. I was getting into the whole list, and I want to name them all and talk about who these people are and their connections. There's a lot of interesting stuff when you dig into.
Look at this. Yes, Howard Lutnick was neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan. Lutnick purchased a townhouse at 11 East 71st Street in 1998. Which was adjacent to Epstein's property at 9 East 71st Street, 1998. Fuck. Known as the Herbert N. Strauss house. Real estate records indicate that Epstein had significant ties to the property Lutnick acquired, including being listed as a trustee in transactions involving the property between Lutnick's purchase. Wow, bro.
And now Lutnick's the head of the Commerce Department for the Trump administration. Sorry.